Hi, welcome to Shaky Sports Journeys. Thanks for joining us. Today, going to be chatting a little bit about the Ashes so far and a little bit about Test cricket as well. So I thought I need to find a good guest, somebody with good knowledge of this. And I've been following this woman on Twitter for a while. You'll know her as Legside Lizzie, and she's very, very good, very straight to the point. I really enjoy it. So I say hello to Elizabeth Ammon. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Pleasure. It's a pleasure. First question I want to ask you is, how did you get into cricket, and how did you then go on to start covering it?
Oh, it's a bit convoluted, but I got into cricket in the same way that I think quite a lot of people did through my dad and my brother. They both played for a club in Sheffield Collegiate, which is where Joe Root and Michael Vaughan played. And I didn't even really like cricket, but I did the scoring because you got paid for it. So I started doing the scoring and actually really loved it. Sort of quite like sitting on a Saturday afternoon, just putting dots in a book and pulling a few buttons on a scoreboard. And then, I never played because when I was growing up, it was quite a long time ago. There just wasn't any women's cricket. There just wasn't any. I didn't even know women did play cricket. So, and then I moved back to London after I graduated, and actually I worked for the government for 20 years, but I still did club scoring and some Colts coaching and run junior sections at my local club. And then when I was approaching 40, I was approached by the Times and said, "Would you like to come and work for us and cover cricket?" And so here I am. It was a bit of a huge change of career, but it's fabulous. It's a fabulous job. It's a dream job.
You're very good at it, and it's interesting. Scoring is a really good way to learn about the game. It really is. I did it as a child myself when I was very young, and it really does teach you the ins and outs.
Yeah, it does. And you have to. You have to watch every ball. It teaches you concentration, and you sort of, particularly in club cricket, when you're listening to the chat from the guys, waiting to go into bat and what have you, you kind of learn quite a lot about the game and about how people talk about it. And I sort of really loved. There's nothing quite like club cricket, is there? The sort of sense of community and everybody pitching in. It's not money; it's done for love. There's a lot of days when you're sitting there on a Saturday with 3 jumpers on and wondering why on earth you're spending your time doing this, and dodging on and off for the reins and having to run on with the covers. But club cricket is, it's the heartbeat of our sport, really, isn't it?
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's where everybody starts. It's we all come through and learn the ropes in club cricket. So no, it's fabulous to hear how you've ended up so involved in cricket. Today, obviously, I want to talk to you about the Ashes. Now, this is something I know you've been having a lot of late nights, a lot of stressful late nights, I'd imagine. What's gone wrong for England in the Ashes?
Oh, so much. It's been a bit shambolic from start to finish. My own view, and I've been pretty consistent on it, is that I don't think they should have gone in these circumstances, because they were setting themselves up to fail, because there was no opportunity for any. Some of it is a scheduling problem. Some of them had to come straight from a T20 World Cup, straight to Australia. But there was no opportunity for any preparation. Not helped by the weather, but there wasn't even any. There weren't warm-up matches scheduled in because of COVID. They've all been in, and England players more than any other players in the world have been in these bubbles for so long. And they're, I'm not going to pretend it's, woe is me. They stay in nice hotels. It's not that awful, but nonetheless, it is pretty draining. It's pretty stressful. The sort of uncertainty of not knowing kind of what the restrictions are going to be, what you're going to be allowed to do, what you're going to be able to do. Is your family going to be there? All of that. That does take its toll. But more fundamentally than that, English red ball cricket is not in a great place at the moment. And that is years and years and years of decisions made by people at the top that have just not allowed the first class game to flourish. It's been shoved into the margins of the season. White ball cricket has been predominant. We have 3 white ball competitions. The first class game is not loved. I mean, we all know it's not lucrative, but it is where people learn their trade, and it needs to have a lot more love. But we've sort of set these guys up to fail, really, because it's hard enough going to Australia at the best of times without all of the things that have gone on. They were missing their two fast bowlers. They were missing Jofra. Ben Stokes, who's obviously integral to the England team, had been missing for a while. He'd gotten a game time under his belt, so he hasn't been, the saviour of this Ashes, as I think people were rather hoping he might be when it was announced he came on. But they've also made some terrible decisions. I mean, the team at the Gabba, I don't know what you think, but what on earth was going on at the Gabba? They picked the wrong team, and then they batted first on a bowling pitch, and then kind of behind the 8 ball before you've even started there, haven't you? Some really bizarre decisions have gone on. There doesn't seem to be any clarity of thought within the England management, and they tell us they've been planning for this Ashes series for 4 years, but it doesn't look like it, does it? So it's been pretty grim. I mean, obviously the last test they showed some fight, but the fact that we're sort of celebrating a draw rather indicates to you where we're at.
Yeah, the draw was a massive positive, going from what had taken place in the 3 tests previously. But yeah, you're right. That's not what they went there to achieve, to draw the 4th test and to be, cheering and with excitement. You mentioned the county game. Now, this has been something that's been getting discussed quite a bit during the Ashes. Now, as somebody who's played kind of second team championship quite a few years ago, around 2010, 2011, the standard of even second teams back then was quite phenomenal. You would turn up on the start of a game, and you would have 4, 5, 6 first team players getting some game time under their belt. Whereas you look around the circuit now, I mean, are people really interested in becoming first class cricketers and going on to become test cricketers now? Is that a big issue? Is everyone just out looking for the lucrative T20 deals? Is that what's maybe having an effect on the first class game as well?
Possibly. I mean, when I speak to county cricketers, they do still all, the kind of the pinnacle is still playing test cricket for England. But what I think is that that if you don't feel like it's possible, or you're a long way away from it, there are a lot of options for young cricketers these days, that don't involve having to bowl 20 overs up the hill into the wind. You can make a very nice living from not having to do that. And indeed, we have to look at the sort of financial incentives. It seems nonsense to me that there are some players who earn more in 5 weeks playing in the 100 than their annual county salary. You've got to wonder why young men, indeed young women, would want to do the hard yards. But I do think, particularly in this country, and perhaps less so around the world, Test cricket is still the thing that people see as the pinnacle. And when you look at a player's profile on Cricinfo, it's kind of first class and Test that I look at first.
Yeah,
not their T20 figures or whatever. So, in terms of your kind of legacy as a cricketer, I still think people think it's your first class and your Test figures are pretty important, but there's got to be some level of investment that means that there's an incentive to be a first-class cricketer, and particularly an incentive to be maybe a first-class only cricketer. You don't have to be all formats. But I think increasingly we will see more people just have white ball contracts.
My next question was going to be there's one test to go in Hobart. What's your hopes for that test match? Do you take a bit of confidence from what's just happened in the 4th test, the fact that England were able to bat a little bit better? Johnny Bairstow, obviously with a fantastic fighting century. Surely they've got to take, Stokes has got himself in a few runs as well. Is there a chance England could win the last test?
I mean, it's not impossible at all, in that, Australia won't roll over. That's not their way at all, but they are struck a bit with a couple of injuries. They've not got Josh Hazlewood again. There's question marks over Scott Boland. there is some confidence taken from Bairstow getting runs, from Stokes being able to stay there. Obviously, Josh Butler's gone home, so we might well see a debut for Sam Billings, and Sam Billings has got nothing to lose. You know, he can play really fearlessly, actually, in Hobart, because he's got, you know, it's an unexpected call-up, and he may not play again. So he's just got the opportunity to just go, this is what I can do. This is me, Sam Billings. The top is a bit of a problem. And Joe Root and Dowd Milan is a bit of a concern. Started the series really well, looked really solid, you know, actually like he was one of the ones who was coping with the extra bounce and all of that. But had a slightly torrid time the last couple. England's problem is, it is the batting. It really is the batting. They still didn't make 300, did they?
No,
I mean,
no, they didn't.
So it's, you know, that's got to be the fundamentals, hasn't it? It's you've got to, in your first innings, that's got to be your target, because the poor bowlers, they're forever behind. You know, you can't place the field where you want to play. If you've got scored that, you know, you're defending a low score, you can't place the field where you want to. You can't go on the attack, can you? So it's sort of affected everything, really. And
what do you do with the opening batting?
Oh, I mean, who knows? I mean, at one point I was in favour of Johnny Bairstow opening the batting. So, you know, I think Hamid's got to be taken out the firing line. You know, he is clearly a very talented player, but this has not suited, the Australian conditions has not suited him. And he looks timid, and he looks a bit like a rabbit in headlights, and just kind of for his own sake, really. He probably needs to be taken out the firing line. He probably needs to not go to the Caribbean, and then he just needs to go to Nottinghamshire, go back to Peter Moores, the loving arm of Peter Moores, get some runs early season. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? You know, a couple of decent knocks, and all of a sudden you're a different player. So I suspect Rory Burns might come back in. Crawley was a real.
I think he's been dealt with a little bit harshly. I mean, when you actually look at his numbers, I know he had a shocker first ball of the Ashes. You know, his technique got questioned and everything else. But you know, for anyone that's played cricket, that wasn't the easiest ball to get first up.
No,
you know, he has fallen over, etc. His technique's been a little bit questionable. But do you think he's been scrutinised a bit too much?
Quite probably, because I mean, he has. It wasn't that long ago, was it? He got a century. You know, he has performed in that role in recent times. I think the problem is his technique does come under scrutiny, because there's a lot that can go wrong with it. And once a lot that goes wrong, it sort of all starts to go wrong, doesn't it? It kind of unravels. And I think we're sort of looking for an opening batsman saviour, and I'm not sure they're there. I'm not sure where they are.
Well, Zach Crawley, you know, he is definitely one that has, I think, proven, whether his numbers to date are, you know, way up there, but the way he batted, you can tell when you're watching a Test cricketer, this guy's got time. He's got he knows, he looks very comfortable at the crease. He's got to be somebody that they kind of look to build on moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. He really did for that innings of 70 odd he got. He looked absolutely class. I mean, it was, you know, he as you say, so much time. He was able to manoeuvre it around how he wanted to. And most importantly, he kind of took the attack back to the Australians, didn't he? He made a sort of statement. And so he's definitely one that England will build for the future around. I mean, at the end of this Ashes tour, there's going to be a cull. There is going to be a shifting of the guard, in that I wonder how many will go to the Caribbean in March. But also we do have to start thinking, it might be premature to chop off some of them, but we do have to start thinking about, you know, the future. And some of these guys are not going to be in Australia in 4 years' time. With the best one in the world, they're just not going to be there because they're too old, or their bodies won't hold up. And if it takes a long time for a Test cricketer, doesn't it, to kind of work out the step up from county cricket, and it's a big step up, and to be comfortable in the environment, and to feel comfortable in their own game, so that they can go about their game plans rather than worrying about their technique or this and the other. I mean, one of the things that's always concerned me is that we I think sometimes we pick people too early, and we don't. That, you know, they come into that arena and it's, you know, it's gladiatorial, isn't it? Especially the Ashes. You know, it's as brutal as it
high
gets.
pressure.
Yeah, it's as brutal as we get, and we expect a lot of them. We expect a lot of these young men, and then when they don't perform, we get rid of them. So, but actually, the accusation of this England team is that people it's become a bit too cosy, and that there isn't, there isn't pressure on places as much as there should be, and some of that is because the county game is not producing people who are really ramming on the door to the selectors. The selectors is another issue, isn't it? It's always it's absolutely astounding decision that you would have the head coach and the selector being the same bloke. I just think more minds is a better thing, isn't it? You can discuss people who've watched them. There's no way Chris Silverwood's watched any county cricket in the last 2 years. He hasn't been out of a bubble. So it's interesting, isn't it? I think irrespective of whether this is, a 4-0 series or a 3-1 series or a 3-0 series, there's a lot that needs to happen in when they come back to England.
Just on the head coach role before we go on to talk about some other Test cricket goings on. Gary Kirsten's name has been branded around. Have you got any preferences of somebody that you would like to see come in?
Well, I in one of my pieces in the paper, I just shoved a rather left field suggestion out that Owen Morgan should do it, because I think he'd be, in a sense, very good because he's ruthless and he's innovative, and he wouldn't, he'd stand up to the ECB and he'd get what he wanted. He has done in the white ball team. I think Gary Kirsten's a very good candidate. I do think the role is going to have to be split. It has to be split between red and white ball. It cannot carry on like this. They are away so much that despite people in suits saying that we need to play less cricket, they just keep shoving more and more into the schedule. Next winter is bonkers for England. So I think they're going to have to split it. And Gary Kirsten has said he will only take a role if it's not all formats. But there are other names in the frame. The thing is that actually it's not a particularly attractive job being England Test coach. You can earn just as much money, going around the T20 franchise circuit, and you don't get all the hassle, and all the stress and the being away from your family so much. So I think it will have to go to someone who is a little bit more ruthless than Chris Silverwood. Chris Silverwood is just a nice, gentle man, isn't he? But actually, I think that's gone a bit too far, that it all being a bit too cosy, and perhaps need a bit more of an Andy Flower type guy to just get a bit of discipline and kind of ruthlessness into the side.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think even with Joe Root as well, I think the combination of Root and Silverwood is almost a bit too nice.
They're just too nice, yeah.
And I think, a more hard-nosed coach, somebody a bit more ruthless, I think would work well with Joe Root, whether he stays in the position or wants to stay in the position. But the one thing I can say for Joe Root is he's tried. He really has tried with the bat during this series. He's put himself out there. He's taken some blows. He's fought his best for the team. But it's a hard graft to just do it as a one man thing. There hasn't been consistent support from many.
No, absolutely.
You mentioned Milan. I think Milan just looks drained. He looks really tired. He looks like he's tried hard, and it's taken its toll on him now. But that's it. That's the Ashes covered. Fingers crossed here. That you, I say fingers crossed for you because I'm a neutral in the Ashes. I just sit on the fence a little bit, but it should be a good test at Hobart, and here's hoping for an entertaining match. There's quite a lot of other Test cricket going on at the moment. Quite exciting Test cricket. The first series to talk about is currently sitting at 1-1. Actually started, I think, this morning, which is between South Africa and India. Now that's poised beautifully. That's Test cricket at its best. 1-1. Going into a decider. How you enjoying that series?
Yeah, it's a good South African cricket is going through its own problems, and a little bit of turmoil and changes of personnel and issues within the governing body, never-ending issues within the governing body in Cricket South Africa. But what we've got here is two quality teams, something with some world-class players. And it's been a really thrilling series, actually. It's been a really thrilling series that, as you say, is perfectly poised. And where are we now? India. Well, Kohli's at the crease, isn't he?
Yeah, he's back. He's going well. Him and Rabada I've not watched much yet because my toddlers had the TV on, but I'm hoping to catch a little bit this afternoon. But yeah, Kohli and Rabada sounded like they were having a good battle.
A good battle, which is just what you want to watch, isn't it? That's what we want to watch. We want to watch those battles between fast bowlers and batsmen, and it's what keeps us kind of engrossed in Test cricket. You know, it's why we put up with all the days of rain and, you know, the dull sessions and all that, because there were some thrilling encounters.
And it's how we can celebrate a draw as well. I mean, the amount of times you've probably been asked this through life, how can you play 5 days of a match and not have a result at the end of it? That's the beauty of Test cricket. Only Test cricket could pull that off. And we were all still gripped to the TVs at the end of that Test match, knowing that can England get a draw? I know we've moved on from that conversation.
Yeah.
Back to it. It's amazing what Test cricket does to your emotions. Who's going to win this Test then? Who's your money on, India or South Africa?
Oh, it's really difficult to say, isn't it? I mean, it's hard to bet against India because they've got such a well-balanced side, haven't they? They've got all the facets are there, and they've got world-class players in all places. But South Africa don't. They've got some fight about them. South Africa, they don't roll over.
Yeah, no, considering all the politics that's going on in their board, etc., and the disaster of the T20 World Cup as well, they've really come back, regrouped, and are looking like a formidable Test team again. So yeah, I think it's going to be a good one. 50-50, it sounds like we are here. Maybe tipping India. The other one has been a really interesting one. It's been a great story. Bangladesh have gone out to New Zealand to play the Black Caps and had a phenomenal victory in their first Test. I mean, what a victory for the country, for the nation.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, it was just so moving because the Bangladesh don't have any, they're limited resources. It's been a really tough couple of years. Results have been pretty hard to come by. They didn't have a great time, did they, in the T20 World Cup? Lost all their group matches, I think, didn't they?
Yeah.
It's tough for them. And this is New Zealand. These are the World Test Championships, champions, the number one ranked side. They are a formidable force, particularly at home in their conditions. And that was it was a stunning victory, really, wasn't it? And it was a real reminder that that Test cricket is better when there are more teams who are competitive, and that we should do as much as we can to make all teams competitive, make sure they've got the right levels of investment because you don't want Test cricket just to be dominated by 2 or 3 teams, do you? You want all series to be competitive. And the other thing is that, that England haven't invited Bangladesh over for a Test series in, 8 years or something? It's time they did.
Yeah, I agree. And it'd be nice to see some of the big Test playing nations going to Bangladesh as well. I mean, we're obviously there's a lot of conversation going on just now about touring Pakistan. Obviously, England pulled the plug on it after New Zealand left. Australia are talking about going to Pakistan. Me coming from a Pakistani background as well, I mean, it would be amazing for the country. I mean, the people are just great. It's like India and Pakistan, they're just the same. The passion for the game, but you need a good West Indian Test team. You need a good Pakistani Test team to really, I mean, the exciting Test cricket I remember growing up watching, the Brian Lara days, and when the Australians were touring, etc. It's just died in the Caribbean. We don't see that kind of Test cricket anymore. It's sad that it seems to be the big teams kind of just keep playing each other. So I agree with you. We need to see more of that. Is that an answer then, do you think, to getting the great game of Test cricket back, to get these series going again and get the smaller Test teams a chance to play against the bigger teams?
Yeah, it has to be, and it has to be sort of centrally led, really, by the ICC. But of course, they don't have, they don't really have much power. The ICC, they're led by their own individual boards, and we see, the big three really, led by India, that have all the power, and there's an issue with money. The money doesn't get distributed fairly amongst everybody, which means that, in the classic case of West Indies, you can see why some of those players give up Test cricket and go and do the various T20 franchise leagues, because their Test salary is not, there's nothing to write home about, really. So there are some fundamental things that need addressing. perhaps a guarantee of a minimum wage for a test player. Any test player in the world gets at least, a level, so that they're all, they can all guaranteed some sort of income. But these are big issues that it's going to take a real collective to grapple with.
Yeah, I think so. Something else, just as we come towards the end of our chat, that I wanted to mention was obviously Ross Taylor. Just played in his final Test match. What a servant for the Black Caps in New Zealand he's been in all formats of the game. He really is a true legend.
He really is, and a really lovely guy, and just a sort of understated, but fantastically skillful cricketer, and a real battler. And he's been an integral part of that team, hasn't he, for so long? I mean, he just feels like, it's like Bolton Southey. You just expect to see them on the team sheet, don't you?
Something that amazes me about Ross Taylor as well, in an era where the IPL came in and you noticed a lot of the big players did slowly, AB de Villiers, the likes of these, they did kind of get more attracted to the IPL, and Ross Taylor was very much in that mix as well, but he's never stopped representing his country. He's played it all the way till now. I mean, even in his final innings, he looked really good at the crease. I mean, the guy could still go on, but you don't get as many Test cricketers like that these days. I just don't feel as many have that longevity in them as they used to do back in the 90s, where you had the great Australian side, or even the England team as well, the Cooks, the Strausses. There's not as many of those type of players around anymore.
No, because I think when people are thinking about their careers, they realise that they can have a longer career if they retire earlier from the longer form, and then they can have an extended run. Their bodies will hold up on an extended run on shorter format. Was I suppose you didn't used to have that option. You either played or you retired. Those were the two options. And it's a bit of a worry, really. Although, I mean, we all love T20. I love T20 cricket. I mean, I love all formats of cricket. So it is great in a sense that you can still carry on seeing players like de Villiers and what have you carry on playing, even when their body, they can't play Test cricket anymore. But Ross has been. That New Zealand team is just. It's been quite a settled team for quite a long time, hasn't it? You can probably guess sort of 8 out of the team on the team sheet, provided they're fit. With Williamson and Taylor and Bolton and Southey, and it's you can see why they're successful, because they're a real unit, aren't they? They're a real kind of. They're led really well. They're led really well by Kane Williamson, and they kind of really do all play for the badge, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. They're loyal. They really are.
Yeah.
And it shows in the rugby team as well. I mean, they're always just a strong sporting nation, aren't they? They're very powerful. It's been a pleasure to have this discussion with you. I think there's some thinking points there. Maybe some advice to the ECB from Legside Lizzie.
They won't listen to me.
Consider taking up these options. But look, I'll catch you for a second at the end. But thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.